Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update. Join the only official Telegram channel of Rao's IAS Study Circle to get relevant material and important updates. Hello everyone and welcome to the weekly edition of Daily News Simplified, where we discuss the articles which are published on the Sunday edition of the Hindu newspaper and the entire week of Indian Express Explained section. Today, we are going to discuss the following articles which are displayed on the screen. And the timestamping for these articles is already given in the description box. Let us begin with the first article for the day. This explained article was published on 24th of January in the Indian Express newspaper. The article talks about the reining in the subsidy bill. Over the past few months, it has been observed, and which is likely to be observed in the upcoming budget, which is going to be tabled very soon in the parliament, that Indian subsidy bill is rising against what it had been showing in the past 6-7 years. The subsidy bill of the government is likely to be high in this year's budget, which should be controlled according to the article to protect the other sector of the economy. Now, subsidy is a very important topic from the perspective of UPSC, both prelims and the mains examination. The classification of subsidy, their trend, and further study has already been covered under different headings of the DNS. And very soon, Rao's IAS will also publish the detailed analysis of India's budget as well as the economic survey, where we will talk about the subsidies in much detail. So today we'll limit ourselves to what this article has talked about, and we will focus on the simplification of this article to benefit the students from the perspective of this examination and its preparation, and to showcase what article has to offer from the perspective of subsidy. This article is relevant for your prelim examination with the concepts and the trend in the subsidy in India. From main examination, subsidy comes under the General Studies paper 3, in which we have the issues related to the planning and mobilization of the resources. As subsidy is one of the monetary resources, this article becomes important. And subsidy also become part of India's government budgeting, hence it is also relevant. You can see that UPSC has asked questions on budgeting from different perspectives. In 2021, 2019 and 2017. They have asked different parameters and perspective of India's budgeting. In this, the public expenditure management also incorporates, and in fact, the capital and the revenue budgets. And lastly, some of the budget related measures are dealing with the subsidy either directly or indirectly. Hence, the study of subsidies and its recent trend from this article becomes important. So let us look into the simplification of this article. Now, as you can see on your screen, we have classified, categorized, and we have provided this flowchart in order to simplify this article in simple and single slide. So let's start what was happening before 2021. Well, previously, that is since 2015, there was a consistent fall in the subsidy bill with the GDP or with respect to the GDP. If we go through this trend, we will find that till 2015-16 there was a consistent rise in the percentage of subsidy bill to the GDP. It was increasing from 10.22% to 11.83%. But since 2015 we have seen that there is a consistent fall in the subsidy bill to the GDP ratio. However, in 2021, as you can see, there is a sudden rise in the overall subsidies which were paid. In this, you will find that the highest proportion was in the food subsidy, which increased from 1,15,000 to 4,22,000. And that is one of the reasons why the overall subsidy bill of the government has increased. Now, we will look into some of the reasons behind this and how this entire scenario is coming into picture. Now, the basic reason behind falling the subsidy bill to the GDP? Well, they were the programs which were started by the government since 2014, and these programs included like Pratyaksha Hastantran Labh, which is nothing but the DBT to the LPG users. Then we have the soil health card, which has reduced the utilization of urea to a larger extent, or the nitrogen utilization in the soil. And this has also reduced the consumption of urea and overall the subsidy provided by the government towards the fertilizers. Then we have various schemes launched under direct benefit transfers. In this, government has reduced the pilferage and the corruption which was there during the, let's say, PDS or the public distribution system or the fertilizer distribution system. The other schemes included the coating of the urea with neem. So these initiatives had reduced the wastages on the subsidy. They have helped to rationalize the subsidy, and that is the reason why since 2015 to 16 there was a consistent fall in the subsidy bill of the government. This has also brought the larger targeting of the exact beneficiary across the nation. However, in the last 2-3 years, what we have seen that Food Corporation of India was not able to capture the economic cost which it was making in order to provide the food under the national food security, and because of this incapability to recover the cost it was incurring, there was a resulted inefficiency in the working of public distribution system infrastructure, as Food Corporation of India was spending more time, more money on what it was doing in its previous functionings or maintaining its own previous level. It was not enabled to spend, to invest more in expanding and making the PDS infrastructure more efficient and more target based. Because of this, there was a high dues which were incurred on FCI, and FCI was forced to raise money from outside. In 2021, what we have seen that there were two reasons behind the rising or the sudden rise of subsidy bill in the country. The first one was the rise in the burden, and the second one was the burden of COVID-19. The rise of burden of dues was seen under three different categories: what, where, and why. Well, dues here simply means high financial burden on the FCI due to market loans. As we have discussed that FCI was forced to borrow from the market because government was not paying the FCI its due amount. So FCI was borrowing from the market, and this borrowing was made at an interest rate of 7 to 8% per annum, which is very high considering the amount of loan it was taking. The loan which was taken from the market was by the Food Corporation of India. This is a government entity. And whenever a government entity take money from the market, it is a burden on government's own exchequer, because one day or the other government have to repay the amount with the interest rate. The basic reason, as we have discussed, was that there was no repayment which was made to the FCI for its PDS functioning. And over the years, it has crossed 1 lakh crore rupees as a burden of the FCI. So government has to meet this burden. The second reason for sudden rise in the subsidy bill was the COVID crisis. In this, we have seen that there was an expansion of PDS at a cheaper rates, as we have seen under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana, where government has expanded the provision of providing the food at a subsidized rate to a larger population. As a result, there was a sudden expansion of the food in the market, that too at a subsidized rate. The second reason was the stickiness to the same prices. Since the advent and the rolling out of National Food Security Act in 2013, what we have seen that the prices of the food grain has remained close to 1 rupee, 2 rupee and 3 rupee at core cereals, wheat and rice respectively. And this non-revision of the prices has raised the subsidy bill on the government. As we have seen in the table that the highest burden was seen in the food bill. So these two reasons culminated into making this year's subsidy bill to be almost 3 times that what previously government was having. So there was a jump from 6% to 16% overall in the ratio of GDP. Now, what government has done? Government has decided in this budget most likely that they will remove entire loan amount of the FCI, and as they have already spent more money on the subsidy bill to the people during the COVID impact, they will justify this through the upcoming budget. But from the perspective of the UPSC, it is important for the student to understand that such kind of high amount infusion through subsidy will have both short term as well as long term impact on the economy. So, as government has raised their subsidy payments, this money will be infused in the economy. First of all, there are certain benefits as well as losses in both short term and the long term. The first benefit would be the removal of the FCI burden. Now, FCI amount which was taken up as a loan, now FCI would be burden free, and now FCI can focus more on its developmental and infrastructural objectives. But this will also increase the budget deficit suddenly in the upcoming months. As we have seen in 2021-22 budget, there was a sudden rise in the fiscal deficit amounting up to 9%. This would be visible this year also, however, the exact amount may differ. It will prevent the seasonal job loss. So this is also one of the reasons. Now government has provided and infused the money into the economy. This has provided food in the hands of unemployed jobless people. Now when the expenditure of food is already met, it will prevent the further job loss in the economy. It will support the industries, especially the industries which are focused in the fertilizer sector. More funding and subsidy and timely payment to these industries will help them to keep functioning for the longer period of time. And lastly, it will provide or it will meet the political wishes of the government. As 5 states are under elections right now, so this kind of initiative or budget promises will help the government to frame the positive outlook among the vote bank it has in various states. In terms of long term impact, well, it will provide poor fiscal responsibility and budget management act record. This act is functioning since 2003-4 and provide the fiscal accountability of the government towards the parliament. Now, as we have seen, the subsidy bill is rising, so the accountability of the government will be there, but the target which it has set in order to meet the 3% of the fiscal deficit will not be possible in this year. It will also encourage the popular politics in the long term. So government might get encouraged in the future to announce similar kind of initiative in and around the budget. It will create an inflationary pressure in the economy. As we have seen, the basic economics says the more money goes to the economy, the more inflationary pressure it will create. It will have impact on the other sectors. For instance, subsidy act like a stimulus. It will act like a stimulus to the fertilizer industry. But there are other industries who were badly impacted during the COVID crisis. Those industries will feel neglected as well as will find it difficult to survive in such a harsh economic conditions. It is not a rationalized step in order to provide the subsidies to each and every person. However, we should understand that the initiative which was taken by the government was not as a popular initiative, but it was an initiative which justifies the impact of COVID crisis in the country. So if people were dying hungry, it is the responsibility of the government as a welfare state to provide free and if not, the subsidized food to the poor people. And this is what they have done during the last 2 years. And lastly, it might put a discouraged instance against the private investment. So private sector functions on the profit and competitive biddings. Subsidy goes against the competitive approach if the subsidies are not completely targeted. So the food grains which could have been sold in the open market for the benefit of the farmers, the producers, sellers and the middlemen was now sold to the poor people at a subsidized rate, and subsidy is in this case was not in support to the private investment. We have already seen the case of lack of investment from Food Corporation of India because of the high burden of loans. So these are the basic short-term and long-term impact which this initiative might create in the future. Now from this table you can easily see that how Food Corporation of India was borrowing utilizing the National Savings Certificate. Now this is the initiative or this is the method from which FCI was borrowing from the market at an interest rate which was close to 7 to 8%. Now in 2021 you can see the total borrowing was around 1,36,000 crore rupees. However, they were able to repay only 68,400 crore rupees. So the overall outstanding was 3,22,000 rupees. Now what government has decided that this year they will pay the entire amount, so the outstanding will be zero. And this is one of the primary reasons for rising the subsidy bill as per this article. So with this entire discussion, let us now move to the next article for the day. This article of Indian Express was published on 27th of January 2022. This article talks about the Padma Awards which were announced recently. Now the controversy around this award was that some of the members, including the ex Chief Minister Buddhadev Bhattacharya of West Bengal, denied or simply rejected to receive this award. Now this has raised a controversy across the state and has aroused a separate interest of study that what are Padma Awards, how they are awarded, who award the Padma Awards, and what are the basic eligibility for this award, and can a person reject on its own how this award should be given. The context says that recently 128 people were conferred the Padma Award by the Union government. So the first fact says that it is given by the Union government and not the states. The relevance is very simple. This article is important from your current affairs perspective in prelims and the mains examination. So let us simplify this article and understand what Padma Awards are all about. Well, from this single slide, we'll understand the entire structure of Padma Awards. Well, these awards are the second highest civilian awards given in the country after Bharat Ratna, and they have the basic three classification. Well, the order of preference is like this: Bharat Ratna, followed by Padma Vibhushan, followed by Padma Bhushan, and last in order we have Padma Shri. Well, these awards along with the Bharat Ratna started during the 1954 period. It was started during the period of Jawaharlal Nehru as the Prime Minister of India. It recognizes the achievements which were taken in all the fields of human endeavor. It is not limited to literature, art, science and technology and others. It is open to every person. This category of all was later added to the Bharat Ratna also. Previously, Bharat Ratna was limited to certain sectors or certain areas of achievement. Now it is open for all. All the persons, including doctors and the scientists, even if the doctors and scientists belong to the public sector or they are the government doctors or the scientists. So this award can be given to them. But government servants, including those people who are working in the public sector undertakings or public sector banks, are excluded from receiving this award. When it comes to the nomination, well, all citizens of India can nominate or can be nominated. A person can nominate himself or herself also. As far as awarding and selection is concerned, it is under the Padma Award Committee, which is chaired by the Cabinet Secretary to the Union Government. Every year, the maximum number of awards which are given includes 120 only. However, this does not include the people who are receiving the award after death. Now coming to the controversy. Is there any process to take the consent of an individual before awarding him or her this Padma Award? Well, as per the rules, there is no requirement to take the prior consent of an individual. The committee who has received the application or the committee who has received the suggestion to nominate a person for this award can take its own decision. However, every time they take the decision, they make a separate call maybe through a written letter or maybe through a phone call, and communicate this to a particular person that they have been selected for this particular award. Now it is up to that particular person whether they want to take this award or deny this award. But their permission is not taken for the consideration. From this perspective, now we come to the similar article which was published today in the Hindu newspaper. So far, we have discussed from the perspective of the Indian Express. All these points and detailed analysis was published even today. And that is the reason why we have combined both the articles from the Hindu newspaper as well as from the Indian Express to cover this entire topic. Now, from this entire discussion, now I will leave you with this question. So read this question carefully and try to answer in the comment box. This would be your question number 1 for today. Let us now move to the next article for the day. This Indian Express article of explained section was published on 27th of January 2022. This article talks about the initiative taken in the field of science and technology, that too the astronomy or space sciences. Recently, ISRO's chairman, that is Indian Space Research Organization's chairman, who is also a new chairman to the organization, as Somnath, has confirmed that India will soon start launching the small and micro satellite using its new launch vehicle, which is Small Satellite Launch Vehicle or SSLV. The relevance of the article comes from the fact that UPSC has been asking questions related to space sciences and the astronomy in the current affairs perspective of the prelim examination. In the mains also, it is important under the category of your General Studies Paper 3, Achievements of Indians in Science and Technology. Now, as it is an indigenous development, it is also important for the category of indigenization of technology and development of new technology. Apart from this, the main syllabus also talks about the awareness in the field of space. So, the content for this article would include everything about the SSLV, their features, objective, benefit, future perspectives, and others. So, SSLV or Small Satellite Launch Vehicle. Well, they are launched in the low Earth orbit, which is 2000 km above the sea level. The reason for creating such small vehicles are that they will cater the demand for low Earth orbit satellites. They will provide demand-based delivery to multiple orders, most of them being the academics. You must have been reading about this topic that PSLV or Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, which is currently utilized by the government or the ISRO to launch small satellite, launches many of the satellite which belongs to a particular institution or educational institutions such as universities and colleges. But PSLV and GSLV are quite expensive, very heavy, and require a longer period of time for installation and its launching. So, to find a good alternative which is easy to install and quicker, government and ISRO has decided to develop this new launch vehicle to meet the multiple orders. It will create a synergy between the private sector and the public sector, because the most important objective of creating such vehicle is to meet the demand created by the private sector, specifically, as I said, mostly the academic areas. So people who are belonging to private sectors, the new startups, the new entrepreneurs who are looking for launching small satellites now can have a new vehicle altogether. And in this manner, ISRO can provide at least 100 to 120 launches every year, which is a very, very high number. And of course, through the indigenization of the technology, it will promote the Make in India program. ISRO is trying to launch this vehicle, the first launch being scheduled in the April this year. Now coming to the basic benefit. These satellite launch vehicle can carry small satellite which can weigh up to 500 kgs. Beyond this, we are utilizing the PSLV, and satellite which are weighing 2 to 3 ton, we are utilizing GSLV. The second benefit being its small size. Because of its small size, it is quick in its installation, it has a very low cost, and small number of people, just 6 to 7 people are required in order to install and launch these satellites or this vehicle. It can suit multiple satellites. So a single vehicle, let's say there are 10 satellites of 50 kg each. So all these multiple satellites can be launched using this single vehicle. And this vehicle can also place satellites into multiple orbits. And because of these benefits, India is leveraging this technology to be a boom in the upcoming public-private partnership in the space development and space technologies. Now, from the perspective of UPSC, it is important for the student to understand basics about the orbits also. So this is how the space satellite orbits are defined. Basically, there are three. The low Earth orbit, beyond this we have medium Earth orbit, and then we have the geostationary Earth orbit. Now, most of the students must have also heard about the polar orbit or sun synchronous orbit. Well, polar orbit is one of the type of LEO or low Earth orbit. So polar Earth orbit is one type of low Earth orbit which follow the path of poles. So the satellite moves from North Pole to the South Pole in this manner. So as you can see, let's say this is your North Pole and this is your South Pole. So this is how the polar Earth orbit remains. And one form of polar Earth orbit is the sun synchronous orbit, in which the satellite remains in the low Earth orbit, mostly remains around the polar Earth orbit, but when a satellite passes through a particular part on the planet, it faces that part of the planet which is lit or which is showing the daytime. So if the satellite is passing over India, then India must be in the daytime. Satellites which are placed in sun synchronous orbit will not go from any part of the earth where there is night. So this satellite will synchronize with where there is sun. So if there is day, the satellite will pass over that particular area. So this is how the satellite or the orbit system in the space is defined. We also have highly elliptical orbit, but that remains out of the perspective of most of the satellites, and that is the reason why it is least important from the perspective of UPSC preparation. With this basic discussion, let us now move to the question attached to this article. This is your question number 2. So read this question carefully and try to answer in the comment box. This article of Hindu newspaper was published on page 10 and talks about the recent discovery of a new form of neutron star by the scientists, which they are presuming to be the first such example of neutron star. Scientists have detected what appears to be an incredibly dense star and behaving like anything else which has ever seen before. And all these scientists are suspecting that this might be one of the type of exotic astrophysical object which was only hypothesized previously. Now, what is this star? What this object is all about? And what is the basic hypothesis that is going to be our discussion today? Well, UPSC has asked such kind of astrophysical questions in the prelim examination multiple times. For instance, one they asked about the Goldilocks zones in the space. Similarly, they can ask the questions related to the neutron stars as well. So today we'll discuss that from the perspective of prelim examination. Well, according to the scientist, it is one of the first known example of Magetar or ultra long period of Magetar. Now, what is Magetar? It is one of the variety of neutron star. And the question arises, what is a neutron star? Well, neutron star is the end part of the star's life. Like any other object in the universe, a star is born, it survives, and it dies at the last. When a star dies, it collapses. Well, neutron star is a collapsed core of a massive star which had exploded because of the supernova. Well, it happens like this. First, there is a birth of a star, then it grows, matures. After a period of time, which is a very long time in the space, that star starts collapsing. It started losing energy and start dying towards the end. When it dies, there is an activity known as supernova. And this star goes on reducing in size, but its density keeps on increasing. A small star, very small star with a very high density of gravitational force is known as the neutron star. And as we have said, Magetar are one of the type of neutron star with much stronger magnetic field than the other neutron star. As we have said, neutron star becomes so small, their density increases very high, and with that force, their magnetic field and gravitational force also increases. When the same ordinary neutron stars begin to spin and spinning at a very fast pace, that neutron star is called as pulsars. This spinning can even be as fast as going for milliseconds or even seconds per spin. Now let us understand this in a more descriptive manner. Now these are the three forms of neutron stars that we have in the universe. And this article was based on Magetar. A neutron star, as we have discussed, is a dense core. Core means the middle part, which was left when the star died because of the supernova and it exploded. The size of a neutron star is just 15 to 13 kilometers, which is sometimes even smaller than the village size on this planet. And despite this very small size, the density, the material inside this star is 3 times the mass of sun. So it's like this. Let's say this is your sun, our own star. So 3 times of sun would be like this. So let's say this is 3x of sun. And the same amount of material will be found in the tiniest possible object. Now you can imagine the kind of density this object, the neutron star, must be having. The entire mass of 3 sun collapsed and compacted into such a small star known as neutron star. And that is the reason why the magnetic field is very high around this star. Now, because of this high density which this neutron star has, it is considered to be the densest object in the universe just after the black hole, because black hole is the most densest object around the universe. It is so dense that if we compare just one teaspoon of neutron star can have 4 billion tons of earth. That is beyond one's imagination. And that is the reason why neutron star has remained the focus area of astrophysicists. Now coming to its types. The first one is Magetar, which was also recently discovered and was the focus of this article. Well, Magetar are the form of neutron star, but their magnetic field is 1,000 times stronger than the normal neutron star. Neutron star itself has a very high magnetic field, and if it is 1,000 times beyond that, it is Magetar. So it is neutron star plus magnetic field, which together make this word Magetar. If this is your neutron star, this is going to be the magnetic field, which goes on decreasing as we go away from the particular star. Scientists by now have only discovered 30 such Magetars so far. However, the recent discovery is the best of all. The second category is the pulsar that we have already discussed. It is the fast pace moving or spinning neutron star. When it rotates on a very high speed, it releases the magnetic radiation through its magnetic poles. And that is the reason why the range of magnetic field of a pulsar star is very narrow. In previous case, we have seen the magnetic field is very widely distributed and it is also very high. But in case of pulsar, it is very narrowly defined. The third case is the Magetar plus pulsar. As of now, only 6 such known neutron stars where both Magetar and pulsar have been discussed. Here both the magnetic field and the beam of radiation is very high. So from this entire discussion, we have learned that scientists have recently discovered one of the type of neutron star, and that brings us to also known that what are the different types of neutron star found across the universe. With this discussion in place, let us now move to the last article for today. This article of Hindu newspaper was published on page 8 and talks about the recent initiative of India to hold its 10th military cooperation meeting with the state of Oman. Now, Oman has a strategic location. Along with that, Oman is also one of the friendly nations of India in the Gulf. And Gulf here means the Persian Gulf. India is going to organize, after the gap of 3 years, a joint military cooperation committee along with the Oman. This is the highest form of engagement that India holds with the Oman in the field of defense. In the past few years, Oman has grown as an important Gulf country that has defense cooperation, and that too in a wider context. Both the countries are guarding their borders and coastlines and also promote the sea lines of communication. As we know that Arabian Sea is an important area for international trade, especially the oil trade. Both the countries have joint operation to control the piracy. Indian Navy has already set up a station for its logistic purposes in the Duqm port. And Duqm port is not too far away from the Chabahar port of India in Iran. And both these points provide the strategic control of India in the entry gate of Persian Gulf, and also it is very close to the Gwadar port of Pakistan where China has a very larger stake. Even people from Oman are taking their training in the National Defense Academy. This shows the kind of high degree of defense cooperation between both these nations. They have been conducting joint exercises in all the branches of Indian forces. For instance, the Al Naga, which is a joint military exercise. We have Nasim Al Bashar, which includes the biennial joint naval exercises. As both the countries have coastal lines, so naval exercises becomes important in order to have strategic say in the Arabian Sea. Oman is also one of the nations which has participated in the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium. This was asked by the UPSC in its prelim examination once. So, the relevance of Oman for India is very highly dedicated towards the defense cooperation, that too the naval cooperation. Now, it has been observed in the past few years that India has been putting more effort towards building the defense cooperation with those nations which are in the Gulf. And Gulf means the Persian Gulf. These countries include your Oman, Iran, Iraq, UAE, and the Kuwait, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia. The reason for India's over dependence for defense cooperation with Gulf nations is that these countries are rich and can provide impetus to the defense manufacturing of India. And India, as dependent on the high level of oil imports, also require a protection and a dedicated supply of oil from the Persian Gulf. And most of these countries are going through the regional threats for which India also becomes indirectly impacted. These threats include the rise of terrorism. We know the case of ISIS. Then there is the case of nuclear proliferation in countries like Iran. There is the concept of sea piracy. There is the inroads built by China in Iran and Pakistan. There are sectarian clashes among the Muslims. We have the oil diplomacy played by the Western power in these nations. And also the Western countries are playing their proxy war in these Gulf countries. All these issues poses the threat to India and its oil supplies. And that is the reason why India is putting extra effort in order to build the defense cooperation with these countries. If we go through the basic map, so this is where the Duqm is situated in Oman. It is on the eastern port of Oman, and it is not far away from the Chabahar, which is located in Iran and is under India's control. So, both these ports provide the strategic control and strategic prowess to India. Oman is also at the tip of Gulf of Persia's entry. And that is also the reason why India is putting more effort to bring Oman on its strategic side. If India tomorrow turns out to be in a position to control the major strategic position in the Arabian Sea, India will be in a beneficiary position in the near future. With this entire discussion, now I will leave you with question of the day. So read this question carefully and try to answer in the comment box. That's all for today's Daily News Simplified. Thank you.